Hello and welcome, fellow subscribers and other racing fans. Today with a longer setup 101 episode. I told you before, as some are like the shorter ones, some are like the longer ones. So let's do some setup work. I already drove some laps with default setup. We are practicing on Le Circuit Bugatti. I don't know, that was probably pronounced completely wrong again. However, on this French Le Mans circuit, the short circuit, the motorbiking circuit. So I was at 1:36 after several laps on default setup, but it was already clear that the car is much too unstable on default setup. Partly because of the bumps in the road, but also because of the lift-off oversteer, which is, I don't know, I got used to less lift-off oversteer now. The car is rather easy to unsettle if you're going off throttle quickly. So you really don't need that lift-off oversteer, and it's better to go off throttle completely, because else you will use too much brake in the following. So we do some initial changes. For example, tire pressures, they are too high. Let's reduce them to 2 bar for now. We will set them initially 2 in front and rear, and we will change it after the first set of practice laps. So brake balance was kind of okay, so I will not change that for the moment. I didn't look out for the brake temperatures, so the brake duct will stay as it is at the moment. Don't use the traction control, but let's set it to 15 just because we can. Also, force feedback, I always reduce that slightly, increase the FX, reduce the other settings. I like the feel of that. FX gives you more feel of the car oversteering, which is very helpful, especially in the Aston, to react earlier. Now, with the downforce, I'm not sure yet if we are going with the medium downforce or if we are going a low downforce. We will see that in the following. Right now we can keep it at 1 in the front, but I think 9 in the rear is too much, so let's go down to 7. However, we will shift the weight to the back just for this low speed acceleration which we need coming out of the corners in this car with the huge torque. So you also know I set the caster to the highest amount. That's just because it gives me more stability in the car. I have the feeling the car is maybe a little bit faster if it's more unstable. Well, that's in all cars like that. However, it also makes it harder to drive during a race. Another thing which we will change is the camber angle. Well, it's a nice stable angle we have here. However, in project cars, corner speeds do not get faster if you have higher camber, so we will reduce that to 0. I always keep some in the front because else the inner temperatures of the tire are cooler than the outer temperatures. However, Setting it to 0 gives us more traction on acceleration and more on braking, which will eventually help us more than the little gain in stability, because the gain in corner speed is not there, as said. Then also we will go down in ride height, lower center of gravity, better cornering, maybe more scrubbing, more wear on the tires, but definitely faster. The springs were quite hard. I will reduce them by 2 clicks. Maybe we have to increase them again if we are bottoming out too much because of the bumps, but we will see. Also, with a softer car we will reduce the sway bars a little bit, not too much though. Let's go down 5. Bump stops, I will keep them right now, however I will reduce the fast bump dampers. There we are. 1, 2, 3 might be okay. 1, 2, 3. And we will also reduce the rebound dampers. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3. Yeah. Good. Now there we are. What I initially said. I don't like the throttle oversteer, so I will set the acceleration lock to 100% at this point. Also, I will reduce the acceleration lock to 15 to get more traction out of the corners. And with the preload we can make this even smoother, so the car doesn't break traction abruptly if it is breaking traction. So we're going to 40 here. We'll keep the gears and set the brake mapping to 8. I know many of you guys set it down to even 5. I also did this in the past, and for qualifying laps that's definitely faster. But I'm trying to develop a race setup here, and this allows me to drive smoother when going off throttle. Okay, so let's test the setting, those settings, and drive some laps, of course. Yeah, car is already much more stable over curbs. And this allows us to drive faster after all. Let's deactivate the traction control, we don't need that at the moment. I have no idea how to take this corner properly, but I will learn. Whoops! That was not good. Traction still a bit of a problem, I think. Well, let me increase my engine volume a little bit. So I almost can't hear it. Okay, so let's go practice. Probably here already the buttoning out is not happening, so no problem there. A little bit throttle oversteer. Whoops. Came onto the cross there. So it was not a good entry into this chicane. Tire temps seem to be okay, although the right side is a little bit low. Bumps make the rear a little bit unstable. I will probably reduce the rear sway bars a little bit further and make the rear dampers a little bit softer. Okay, now we're going too fast into the chicane. Oops. Okay, that was not optimal. Now let's go back to the pits. We will reduce the left side to 190 and the right side to 185, maybe even 180 for the moment. Let's see how this... Oh, and I forgot to watch out for the brake temperatures. However, I will reduce the brake balance 1 to the rear. It seemed to have a little bit too much understeering under braking. Downforce was okay, however. I could imagine we can try with low downforce here as well. We'll try that later on. So let's reduce to 3 clicks a rear sway bar, and also I will reduce the acceleration lock a little bit further to 12. And again, test drive. Let's go out on track. Let's see what we achieved here. Oh, I forgot to change the dampers. And let's see, maybe it was already enough to make the rear more stable in low speed conditions. Yeah, accelerating out from this corner already feels better. Man, you have to take this chicane slower than you think if you don't want to exceed track limits. Oops. Careful with the curbs in the last corners. Pretty nasty if you hit them wrong. Counter steer a little bit there. Too early on the throttle. It was probably slow because I was too far away from the apex. Also a little counter steering, but car much better to drive there now. Unfortunately an off track in the last corner, but we improved our lap time by almost a second from default setup at the moment. You definitely need softer dampers in the rear. And you see, tire temperatures are now a little bit on the high side. So I will increase the pressures again. Only the front right is pretty much okay. What I always try to achieve is keeping them under 100 degrees Celsius. Because with peak temperatures of 106, 107, the tire really starts to lose grip. Brake temperatures seem okay. We're a little bit far away here. That gives us the opportunity to accelerate quicker out of the corner. Yeah, brake temperature is definitely fine. I think I can brake later into this corner. Okay. Let's go back to the tuning menu and increase the front left to 2 again. We will increase the rear left to 2 as well. Good. I'm already pretty happy with the setup at this point. We will reduce the brake duct a little bit, but only by 5%. Should be okay. Now the dampers. Dampers. Rear. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. So for the moment we keep that, and I will now try to use less downforce. Just so you know, if you're changing the downforce, you usually also have to change the springs and maybe the overall ride height. However, we will just try it for the moment and see if it helps, or if the car is still drivable at least. So let's go down on 0 and use a 4 in the rear. So with this setup possible, with low fuel, you see 34s are definitely in. Car is still drivable with the lower downforce. However, it's overall a little bit more unstable. Oops, brake temps are not there yet. That's why braking wasn't optimal. Always takes a lap or two. No display on the huge tower there. Oh yeah, you have to brake earlier because of the missing downforce. It's quite significant. However, you also gain some tenths here and there because of higher speeds. If you're faster with lower downforce, always depends on the amount of straight line driving or fast corners. Very fast corners, you have to say. I have the feeling that we don't gain anything with the low downforce setting here. Let's try another lap. Like a little earlier this time. Can't drive my lines as nicely anymore. Probably better to go a little wider in this double 90. Okay, so the car is more unstable, however lap times are about the same. So this is definitely a track where less downforce isn't so bad and you can overtake better in the races. However, it really feels a little bit too unstable for a longer race maybe. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Of course, brakes are also kind of overheating maybe. With less downforce, tire time's a little bit higher, so you want to increase the tire pressures and the brake ducts a little bit with that lower downforce if you want to drive that. Okay, I think that's kind of it. That's all we can do for the moment for this car. It feels alright. Tire temps, brake temps were fine, at least with the higher downforce, and I would recommend to use the higher downforce for the moment. We had 1.7. For the race I would go with 1.8 probably, because it just feels a little bit better on the car. Okay, so let me explain the final setup. As talked about, downforce 1.8, that's a medium downforce setting for the Aston Martin. You can go 0 and 4. However, car will be quite unstable. So for a quali lap, maybe use a 0 and 4, and for the race 1 and 8. Weight bias always to the rear in this car. We need the weight on the rear so we get more traction out of the corners. I explained those settings in depth. 0 or near 0 camber gives us better traction on acceleration and better brake traction as well. So the brake distances get shorter. High caster for a more stable car. Always when you go into corners, it just feels that little bit more safe to drive and you can push a little bit better. If you want to go fast in the Aston, use a lowest right height. And you also have to soften up the springs a little bit. I think I will leave it at that. You probably don't need softer springs, but I wouldn't recommend stiffer springs in this car. Especially on this track there are some bumps which are pretty nasty, and the softer springs just help to cope with that. Keep in mind, it only helps if you don't bottom out doing that. So that's the thing here. We reduced both sway bars, however we reduced the rear sway bar more to get more low speed grip on the rear. Might induce a little bit of understeer in certain situations and increase the wear on the fronts. However, you gain more traction and you gain better stability accelerating from corners. We didn't change the bump stops, pretty happy with them as they are, and we reduced the fast bumps more in the rear than in the front. Also we reduced the fast rebounds also more in the rear than in the front. It helped us with the bumps. Accelerating from the corners, we gained more traction there, especially over the curbs in the last few corners. I told you high deceleration lock as well as high brake mapping to cope with the huge lift of oversteer you have in this car, and I used that in the past to get the car around the corners, but I think it's faster to drive smoother. Do not depend on the deceleration lock, because that also makes the rear tires hotter and wears them out more. Same reason we are using a low acceleration lock. That's rather easy. You can go on the throttle a little bit harsher. You don't need that much of a feel. For the throttle pedal, radiator, well, reduce that. Usually 20-30 is okay for this car, and it won't overheat. Gearing is okay. I mean, you know it. You only have 2 settings in the car, longer and shorter gears. Shorter gears are fine for this track. Obviously, I told you, brake mapping maximum for me. Don't need the lift off oversteer, but if you like that, reduce the brake mapping. Okay, so we're pretty much through with that. Tire pressures, we adjusted to the tire temperatures. Obviously in the front right, less stress tire, we need less tire pressures. Brake pressure is fine. Brake balance, you can increase the brake pressure to 100% if you use ABS, so that gives you a little bit more braking power, but also might induce slight understeer if the brake balance is too much in the front. I will probably use 90 for the race and 100 for the qualifying. Okay, so far so good. I think we are pretty much through, and I hope you enjoyed that setup 101. A longer version. Next time we will probably use a shorter version again. However, keep tuned and see you next time. Bye bye.